And so the recording is starting, and you will have access to where you can go to YouTube on our playlist. I'll upload it to YouTube, and then you can watch it at your leisure anytime you want. Welcome. Thank you so much. This is Johnny Lee. These are some of my organizations. And I'll maybe cover a little bit, but primarily, Piece of Work is providing this to you to look at how you could stop workplace violence. WPV is Workplace Violence 101. Again, just to maybe anticipate some questions you may have, you will get a copy of this presentation. So you will get that, and also where you can see the slideshow, but then you could also go see the recording as well. After this presentation is over, you'll get an email with that info. It's probably going to run a full hour, to be honest with you. Now, I do encourage questions, so feel free anytime throughout the presentation to ask questions. If you can open up your little UI user interface tab, you'll see down here there's a thing that says questions, and if you type in a question, I'll only see the questions, and I won't repeat your name. I'll just say, I'll just try to read your question verbatim, so feel free to be as open as you want with your topics. However, if you type in, hey, Johnny, I want to talk or say something, I can unmute your microphone or telephone, and then you could share. You could voice your opinion, provide some additional information or whatever you want. Even though I have a ton of information, I really enjoy more the interactive sort of programs. That's me. I got to add some more stuff on here. We have the ePanic button Piece of Work. We also have the threat assessment tool, and I showed you the Rampage report earlier. So those are all services that we provide, much of it free, to help people stay safe and not ever get into a horrible tragedy. Oh, I'm pretty active in LinkedIn as well. So with some of these points, if there's a discussion point or something needs to be expanded upon, I'd much rather move that conversation to LinkedIn, where we can have more professionals join in the dialogue and we can all learn from it. I see some folks might be raising their hands. Please let me know. I'm not sure what that might mean. If you're raising your hand, if you shoot me a question, then I can certainly read whatever you need to say, or if I have trouble with audio or something like that, please let me know. Okay. God, I really want to move into this because I got so much material, and I might be hopping around to different subjects. First of all, I'm going to try something a little bit different here. Instead of going over the basics like step 1 through step 5 of stopping workplace violence, I'm going to kind of do it in a backwards order. I'm going to take an incident, just as the ones that we all looked at previously, of all these horrible shootings and accidents occur, and let's try to pretend we can go backwards from the point of the shooting to the hours before, days before, weeks before, years before, and how it could be prevented. So we can look at sort of the active shooter response trainings, how we could have secured the workplace before the person arrived, how we could have known if there were a legitimate threat by doing a threat assessment, and then broadly preparing the organizations to lower the chances of a workplace violence incident. Now, first of all, before I jump into that, a little 101 or a concept just to grasp regarding workplace violence. The California Department of Labor came up with this model of 4 types of workplace violence. Type 1 is the stranger, which really relates to robbery most commonly. So it might involve sexual assault, but the person has no business with the business. They don't work there. They don't know anyone who works there. It's typically coming in to rob the place. Type 2 is the customers and clients, like those that are being served, committing the acts of violence. Now that could be against the worker, or it could be client on client, and you see that sometimes, like there was a riot at a Department of Social Services in the welfare room, where just in the lobby women were fighting. I recently saw a video on that. Type 3 is the coworker or ex-employees, what people typically think about workplace violence, someone getting fired and they come back with a gun. And then the 4th type is domestic violence, when it spills over into the workplace. This could be relationships between coworkers, like they're either married or having an extramarital affair or whatever it might be, or one of the party is an employee whether it's the victim or the abuser, and then the victim or the abuser does not work there. They're not associated, but it does have a huge impact on the workplace. So, my friends, I got a question for you. This will be fun. We're going to now poll the audience here, and I'm going to ask you, which do you think is the most common cause of occupational homicide? So right now you should be seeing a poll, I believe, if that's not mistaken, and you could click on what you think is the across the United States. So we're talking about the United States of America, what you believe causes the most death, the most homicides. So this is not injury. We're talking about lethal incidents, homicides, people dying. I'll give this a few more minutes here before we close up the poll. But just to give you an idea, and by the way, it truly is industry and geographically based. So, it's going to be very different from a manufacturing place compared to like the taxi cab driver. So if anyone ever wants to know what it is specifically for their industry or their position or their gender or their age, there's statistics out there that I could gladly share. And hit me up with a question if there's any questions you have. All right, I'm done. I'm talking too much. Let's close this up. So, all right, folks, vote now or forever hold your peace because I'm closing it up. Ready? Okay, here goes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, it's closed. And now I share the results. And I think hopefully now you could see the results where a lot of people thought it was mostly domestic violence as the leading cause of homicide, and then we can kind of look at robbery and coworkers being in between there. So that's great guesses. And again, we're talking about homicide. Now with that, let's go back to where we were. All right. And survey says, this is according to Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the United States Department of Labor, when there's a death in the workplace, it gets reported. The blue line is domestic violence. The green line is coworkers or ex-employees. And then the red line are customers and clients. And this is from 1997 all the way to 2011. We do have 2012's data as well. But I didn't have the breakdown of by type yet. I do know the total number, but not the breakdown. Golly, so any surprises there? I guess, boy, if this was a live interaction, like we're all in a room together, I'd love to hear your opinions. Or you could type in any comments you have in the questions, and I'd be glad to read those. But, several things is, one point I want to put out is even though these are terrible numbers, we could look at this, like let's just take last year, I'm going to struggle with my math here, roughly 130, 140 homicides due to what people typically think of workplace violence out of the millions of working adults in our country. So the reality is this is a pretty low number compared to car accidents or falls and other things. So I just want to emphasize that I think that there's a fair amount of we have to realize how extremely rare these incidents are, especially when we talk about the mass shootings. And that might sound funny coming from me who specializes in this subject, but I think it's only fair to really be realistic with it. The point that I want to make is that robbery is not listed here because robbery is off the chart. I don't think I put the slide here showing that graph, but robberies are somewhere in the 300 to 400 range a year. So it's the fast food restaurants, the taxi cab drivers, the convenience stores getting robbed that are certainly the leading cause of homicide. Now, when we talk about intentional injury, there's something I just want to throw out here is a very important issue which I think needs to be addressed, and we can look at suicide. Suicide in the workplace. So one thing I don't think really gets nearly as enough attention is the fact that if we look at all of the murders by a coworker, a client, or an ex-husband, you add them all up together and they still don't equal the number of homicide or suicides that occur. And this is a really big issue. It's a really big issue in terms of our communities and our world in general about the skyrocketing suicide rates. But when we're looking at it from a workplace issue, you don't see people running around going, "Oh my goodness, we need to ban guns and put in metal detectors because the suicides at work." But the reality is, you're more likely to die from your own hand than from someone else's, and that's just the data speaking. Hey, any opinions, any thoughts on that? Shoot me a question or say, hey, you want to speak, and I'll unmute your mic, and you could say your whatever you'd like. Moving on, let's talk about how we can stop this. Oh, by the way, when we look at the suicides, a fair number of those are really very similar to homicides in the fact that it's not hurting another person physically, but there's I believe in many of these cases there is an intention to inflict emotional harm. So it was malicious. There was an intent to do harm by committing the suicide in the workplace. Not all the cases, but with that, we've got to realize that many of the same warning signs and interventions used to prevent homicides could be used to prevent the suicides as well. Okay, so what are we going to do? One thing is we could always look at violence as a continuum. So there's a certain date, it happens at a certain time, and there's a timeline before that and afterwards as well, but that's another subject. But when we look at the suicide or the homicide, there's the immediate threat of the gun, the violence, the person arriving there to commit that violence. And by the way, the vast majority of them plan to do this. They're not spontaneous. No one just has a hunky-dory day and then takes out the gun and starts shooting people. It's almost always planned and premeditated. And with that, there's things that we could do. And what I'm talking about here is sort of the tactical response. Looking at the attendee thing, and I did not gear this towards a tactical response about, diamond formations and about, how the SWAT teams can intervene. This is not the appropriate place for that. What we can talk about is surviving that shooting. And I got to say that well, I guess I'll talk about that when we get to it. So there's a tactical response about active shooters response. However, another idea is to address it when it's just a threat or there's a grievance. Meaning, I said these individuals these things happen premeditated. There's a plan. There's a how can I say, like a growth period where we could see this momentum heading towards the violence. And when they're mad about something, we could address it. Or when they actually decide to start taking planning for the violence, there's warning signs as well. At which point what we could do is do an assessment, and we can implement security, and we can provide support for the individuals, and we could set clear boundaries. If I could get some quick examples, very often victims or these individuals are suffering. They're going through a lot. They're having health problems, emotional problems, financial problems, and they don't want to commit these acts. At a certain level, they're human beings, and they realize what this is. What they're doing is wrong. However, they feel justified due to the wrongs that they perceive to be being committed against them. If we can intercede and put in some support measures for them, mental health support measures, financial support measures, time off, whatever it might be, it could help. At the same time, on the other side, because this is why I call it the carrot and the stick, the carrot is providing support. The stick is setting clear boundaries. They are often testing their what they can get away with as well. There are perpetrators who are sort of expert aggressors who know what they're doing. They're being manipulative, and they try to get as much as they can due to their sense of narcissistic, egotistical sense of right, of that, the whole world revolves around them. And they need clear boundaries when we're crossing those lines. So those things need to be provided as well. A great example, of course, is with domestic violence relationships. Abusers don't start off beating up their wives and girlfriends. It's usually a slow, maybe conscious plan on how it builds up. And if there weren't boundaries set clearly saying, hey, you really crossed the line with me, that's where they keep on going for more and more power and control. However, this is all about an individual person or a specific case. Another level is we can look at a systemic issue. We can look at the organization as a whole. And do we have a hostile work environment? Do you have no systems for dealing with threats? Do you have an unsecure workplace? Is there a culture of violence that's a subject as well? And this is an environmental issue. And what we can do is we could counter it with a healthy workplace in terms of leadership development, a trustful, respectful workplace, having policies and procedures to address signs when they're early on. When we start seeing some inappropriate behavior, that quickly it's identified, it's reported, and there's an intervention. That's that sort of environment where it does not continue to become a problem. Now, moving on, that was the theoretical view. Let's go back to our time machine and saying that right now there's a shooting. What can we do to prevent this? Briefly, I'm going to talk about like sort of the active shooter interventions. I'm just going to cover it briefly. I'll zip through these slides. I'm actually not much of a fan of active shooter drills. I think they're wonderful for law enforcement, and they're great for emergency management folks and in terms of getting their systems figured out. But in terms for the average Joe employee, I am reluctant to believe that they will really have any impact on survival chances. That being said, let's say what could be done. And the reason I say that is because the first step, people often say, well, Johnny, should I run or should I hide or should I fight back? You know, of all those three options. You know, I can't say what the best thing to do is because there's so many variables. What's your physical conditioning? So what's the layout? How fast are they? How many of them are there? What kind of weapon do they have? What's their experience with the weapons? So really the best choice is for you to quickly assess the situation and determine your best course of action. The biggest problem with all of that I just said right there is that most people will freeze, will be in shock. There's this disbelief that it's occurring, and that's why so many people die. When you look at these young folks at Virginia Tech who are in the prime of their lives, like physical lives, you know, why couldn't they jump out a window or run or whatever it might be? And a big answer to that is the pure sense of shock. And so to counter this is that you have to believe that you'll survive this. Act. A lot of people are looking for someone else to know what to do. Panicking, the screaming and yelling around, or just standing there dumbstruck, that has a contagious effect. So be that role model. Don't panic and move forward. Now, you know, the thing I struggle with is I don't know how to, in a webinar, and even if we're face-to-face, I don't know how to teach someone not to panic in a situation. Now, obviously what I've said there might raise some questions. So we got a question. Almost every school throughout the U.S. has now conducted some type of active shooter drill or tabletop exercises. Why are companies generally not similarly partnering with local law enforcement to do these drills? Great question. First of all, one is because the schools are government-based. Because as you know, county government or state government, many of these organizations have a mandate coming down from the organization. If there's some company out there, whether it's public or private, like publicly owned or private, you know, it's up to that management or the shareholders to decide the policies. But if I could argue with most of the public schools, we've got that mandate coming in from the cities or from the government. Number two, it's because those are children, right? People are like, oh, we got to save the children. And I'm not being facetious. I mean that wholeheartedly. We got to protect our children. So the answer is that many companies are doing it. Number two, they don't have that political capital. There's not that political motive. When these school shootings happen, like in Sandy Hook, everyone responds. I've got kids in school too, and I'm thinking, what can we do to protect them? And that's where, of course, most of our energy goes. So that's my little opinion. But more companies are indeed doing these partnering drills. I've got more opinions about this, but I'm going to hold off. Shoot me an email if you want to know more about what my real thoughts around active shooter drills in school. My kids, my children are going through active shooter drills, and I have mixed feelings on it. Moving on, the main point that I want to say is in order to recognize the incident is you have to know that it's happening. You know, whether you're going to survive or not often depends on how fast you can move, how fast law enforcement can arrive. And one real problem is that people don't recognize gunshots for what they are. Now, some of you might be familiar with firearms, maybe you hunt, but let me just say that firearms sound very different outside as opposed to inside. Over and over again, when I've interviewed survivors, when I've watched, you know, the news stories, just like you all have, you know, people say, I thought like a box fell, or I thought balloons are going off, or I thought it was fireworks. They didn't realize that it was a firearm. So it's recognizing the sound of that in order to take action. early on. Now, of course, that's different if you see the person who's firing their gun. That's totally different. But for a lot of folks, you're going to hear the gunfire and the screams, and then take the action, not standing there wondering, oh, what should we do? Oh, yes, and with suppressors, they sound very much different. Yeah, that's true. If you're talking about any sort of silencer, I haven't sort of too many of those. I have to be honest that I'm thinking of all the cases. It's a pretty rare issue, but that's a huge issue, of course, with the suppressors. And we're not even talking about attacks with baseball bats or knives. The vast majority of these incidents, though, of course, use firearms. Just realize that. So what do we do? One of the first things is warning others. And this is a management thing, but even the average employee can also do things. Now, in terms of management, if anyone's here from administration, this is where we're talking about mass notification systems, and this is becoming much more popular due to the Clery Act. There's a mandate for campuses in order that they have, it's a requirement for these places to have a mass notification system. Really good ones, and I'm not going to pitch any things or even my own services, but the one thing I do push is redundancy. That I'd much rather have people get the message 3 different times than never at all. And of course, there's questions about reliability and testing them as well. Okay, in order of importance, if you could leave, leave. And one thing that I say is, I bet everyone, I'm guessing, has a cell phone, or you'll find someone, the person next to you has a cell phone. So get out. Don't call 911 from your office phone. Leave, and then as you're running, make that call. And please understand that while you're thinking, oh, how can I dodge someone shooting at me? That's impossible. For a lot of the assailants, they don't have experience shooting a gun at a human being, and they'll miss. So a lot of the times it's when people go under their desk and they're cowering and they're just frozen, that's an easy target. If you're zigzagging, if you're getting around a corner, if you're getting behind cars, these are all things that can be done to greatly increase. People miss all the time. It's actually, especially a handgun, I know there's going to be some people who disagree with me, but it's really hard to hit a moving target with a handgun unless you really have training and experience. Part of that, though, is always being aware of your environment. And this is a basic one-on-one thing for all types of safety, whether we're talking about active shooter or fire or hurricane, or maybe not hurricane because you should stay inside, whatever it might be, earthquakes. Know your exits, and people who've survived horrible incidents, and all safety people, all security people, it's a habit that they know their exits wherever they go into a building. Think about where you work. Where are you typically hanging out in work? In your lunch cafeteria room. How can you get out? If you can't leave, you consider barricading. Ideally, it's somewhere that's secure. I would like to have a place where I could escape from that barricade room. Shut the door, hide it, block it down. Stay away from that door. There are many cases of people knowing there's people behind the door and they're shooting through the door and moving on. Law enforcement, by the way, law enforcement will take a long time to get there. The vast majority of these incidents are over before law enforcement intervenes. Unless it's a really extended incident or they're going from one location to another, law enforcement doesn't intervene. Except in some rare cases, it was just pure luck. With that, what my point is that they hear the sirens coming, and they're trying to maybe kill as many people as possible, so they're not going to waste a lot of time trying to get through a door. They're trying to find that next easy target. One other tip, silence your cell phone. The media is going to find out about this just as fast as law enforcement. The media is going to make news about it. It's going to go around Facebook, and your loved ones are going to call you while they're driving to that location. If you're hiding somewhere, you don't want your cell phone suddenly going off. One other idea, like later on we talk about safety planning, you could have this concept of creating a safe room, like choose it. And I'm not saying every workplace should have one. I've seen this for executive protection. But if you know there's a known threat, like a domestic violence stalking case, think about this person, maybe fleeing is not the best choice, but think about where that person should go, or where everyone should go, and what you want in that room and how you're going to protect that room as well. Okay, the last thing you ever want to try to do is disarm them. Unless, again, make the best decision. At that time, quickly assess things and make your move. I want to emphasize again that it's really possible. Yes, it's possible to take out someone who's got a handgun. especially if they're close to you. Where the problem where you fail is where there's this hesitancy, where you're not 100% committed. Work with others. There's tons of weapons. So I got a weapon right in my hand right now, and it's a cup of coffee. A steaming hot mug of coffee could really distract someone long enough for you to get a grab on the gun. The main thing is you're not trying to beat them up or knock them out. The most important thing you do is you grab the gun and you point it down. Get control of that weapon, have it pointed in a safe direction. And then, believe me, a lot of other people will jump in there as well and try to act decisively is the final line. Again, I'm not a big fan of active shooter things. I mean, hopefully what I just taught you here might be useful and you're actually going to remember it. But more importantly, let's talk about prevention. Prevention is an important issue. Oh, I got more to say. Okay, in some places there's been this push for like guns in the parking lot. There's been more and more laws. I'm here in Alabama, and they just passed the law last month. No, this month? No, 2 months ago, I think in August. With you're allowed to carry a firearm in your car. And I just want to put, this is a post-secret postcard that came out. I'm not going to say whether it's right or wrong for someone to have firearms in the workplace as a personal choice, or whether that you have a firearm. One note I want to say, though, as an employer, as a HR safety security person, that the majority of incidents, of shootings that are going to occur if you allow firearms in the workplace would be from good old accidents. It's not like you're going to take out the bad guy or the bad guy's going to shoot you. It's going to be someone saying, hey, look at my new gun. It's really cool. Boom, bang, oops, whoops, oh no. I believe that one of the biggest risks is unintentional injuries from firearms. I believe, I gotta find some stats on that, but I believe that that's one of the biggest risks you have. Now, one important thing you gotta realize is that officers will arrive, and I think there's more and more knowledge about this, but maybe you're gonna hear it for the first time. Officers arriving will not actually, they're not gonna wait for, 5 guys to show up with the tactical response. It may be that the single officer, or they might wait for one more backup. So 2 officers will go in, and their first job will be to take out the assailant. They're not there to rescue you. They're not there to help the injured. They are there to get in there quickly, determine who the assailant is, and take them out. Now, please understand that with that, officers are going to have their adrenaline going. They don't know who the shooters are. It's not like they wear, it's not like a war or traditional war games where you have the enemy combatant uniform they're going after. They don't know who the enemy is. So it's vital that you demonstrate that you are not the shooter, meaning show your hands, spread your fingers, don't hold anything in your hands, and do what they say. They may tell you to get down, they may tell you to get out. I won't say what they're going to tell you to do because it may vary. Most important thing is don't approach them, show your hands, don't hold anything in your hands, and then follow their instructions. Now, in terms of planning, this goes a little bit, going up the stream for prevention, but there's so much that can be done helping officers. Maybe you're calling 911, you can give a description of them, how many there are. Most importantly, they want to know about what kind of weapons. If you're experienced with weapons and you can identify whether it's a revolver or a semi-automatic or the action of the rifle, that's all helpful to them as well. Now, if you're a safety person or you're a facilities manager, it's really helpful to have schematics available for the responding officers, whether it's online or in your car. Now, of course, you do the warning and everyone runs out and they dump. It's called like a building dump. And you're like, oh, I got schematics for the tactical response team. Where are they? Oh, they're in my office. It doesn't really help. Have those available outside so that they could utilize that. All right, that's all about the emergency. I apologize if I'm speaking quickly, but I got so much material and I still feel that I'm not giving you, of course I'm not giving you the full picture. I hope you join me for other webinars where I break down these little sections and go into detail much more, but I'm just trying to do a quick overview. Now, before the shooting, if you're aware of the potential violence, there's things you could do to secure the workplace, and I'm not suggesting that you do this every day for all eternity. It's when you recognize that there's a threat and you increase your security. There's general security you can do, but the heightened ones are when you've recognized a potential threat. Broadly, we could develop a response plan when the shooter arrives. make the workplace safer, and then often there's a target, there's someone they're after, and you can make them safer as well. Now, if you see the perpetrator coming, and this really applies to you see anyone coming into your building with a gun, but particularly we're talking about when you have a known threat. Have a warning, like be aware, let people know that you're concerned about this individual. It might be a fired employee, it might be an ex-husband stalking his wife or his ex-wife, and what we want to do then is have clear instructions, photographs of them, and I'm actually a bigger fan of car descriptions. Well, I mean, all are important, but anyone's got a view of that driveway. Give it to your maintenance crews. Like everyone thinks about security, of course, has that role, and front desk has that role. But those maintenance guys cutting the lawn and trimming the bushes, they are outside watching everything. And often those are contractors, but you could still work with them to know when the person arrives. Now, there is an issue regarding domestic violence, regarding confidentiality. So you have a victim saying, well, I want to tell you about the situation, but I don't want the rumor mill going around. There is a balance that, you put up a sign up at the front desk saying, hey, look out for this guy because he's made threats to the workplace. And everyone's going to go, hey, isn't that Jenny's husband? So that kind of breaks confidentiality. There is this issue around weighing that balance. My opinion, of course, safety. Safety is always the deciding factor when you're coming up with these dilemmas. Call law enforcement as soon as you can. So what? So nothing happens and the officers weren't needed, that's fine. But because as I mentioned that these incidents are over so quickly, getting law enforcement there as soon as possible is vital. I said earlier that they rarely intervene, and that's true, but maybe you'll be one of those few cases that they actually do intervene and save some lives. Maybe 1 or 2 may die, but not 20. So I'm trying to remember if I took out the slide. There's plenty. I've got one case where a rookie officer came in and stopped the carnage. You may go into a lockdown. Again, depending upon the type of facility. I love manufacturing places because it's really easy to lock down. Very difficult for open campuses like restaurants or hospitals and things like that. You want to have some mass notification again, warning the employees, and especially if there's a target, go talk to them. And then I don't know, do you have a safe panic room or do you have plans on where people should escape? Again, it really varies because we don't know the direction of the threat. So, people often say, do you keep people in lockdown or do you let them run out and then there are just lots of targets running over the parking lot? It really depends upon your facility and the nature of the threat. There has to be a level of flexibility there as well. Okay, we could also look at legal protections, and broadly we could look at like civil sort of protections, meaning trespass orders, and any property owner can get trespass orders against anyone else. In some states there are workplace restraining orders. And everywhere in domestic cases, we have domestic violence restraining orders or orders for protection or peace orders. They might have different, terminology depending where you're from. All those have value. One note regarding domestic violence restraining orders is there's some additional weight there. If someone has a domestic violence restraining order, they cannot possess a firearm. So depending upon the county, deputies may show up at that door and remove all the firearms from that individual. That may or may not happen, that it really is a county by county situation, but many do that. So that's all up to the judge. It comes down to the judge's orders. Shoot, I don't think I put it in here. Another thing that's great is automatic victim notification systems. So this isn't in the slide, so please write this down if you're listening. There's a program called VINE, V-I-N-E, and essentially if someone's in jail or in prison, you can register your phone so it's called automatically if they post bond or they escape or whatever, if they're out of the jail. Meaning if someone says, hey, I'm going to kill you, and then you go, okay, you go to the police, they get a communicating threats warrant, and they're charged and they're put in jail, they're going to post bond within 24 hours probably. The minute they get out, they'll come look for you. So don't you want to know the minute they got out of jail? It's called VINE, V-I-N-E. I think almost every state has one. You can look it up. You're probably Googling it right now, but come on back to my presentation. The other thing you can do is, of course, as the employer, as the property owner, you could take out criminal warrants against or have criminal warrants taken out against the individual. Now, this is all prior to the assault, but often prior to the violence, that there's pre-indicator behavior, such as trespassing, damage to property. A big one is telephone harassment. They're calling a lot. And with that, you could charge them with these minor misdemeanors. Now, a misdemeanor is pretty limited. It's not very strong. But what you can do is, while they are charged with this misdemeanor, they will told by the judge not to harass the state's witness. So they can't. You got a minor telephone harassment charge. They can't continue to harass the individuals involved. So that if they do, then you could go back to the judge, and the judge will charge them. It might vary the term in your state, but basically they may just put them in jail pending the court date. So that's just, there's value. People say, you know, why? A telephone harassment charge means nothing. There's value behind that. It also creates a paper trail as well. By the way, I'm talking all about violence prevention, right? This is my focus is workplace violence prevention. I'm not talking about liability protection. I'm not talking about preventing a lawsuit. That's a separate subject. So please understand that. Maybe I'll talk about that some other day. But there's value in creating paper trails. Naturally, talk to your local law enforcement. Later on, I'll talk about threat assessment teams, but you could get the local law enforcement to increase patrols or do a site survey or do other things. Let's make the workplace safer. Limit your entrances. If you've got a target, someone is you know, they're out to kill someone, maybe they should not be at that workplace. Oh, there I put it in. There's my automated victim notification right there. Maybe you want to keep all your doors locked. Of course, naturally, you've got to have easy egress, right? You can't barricade all your doors because, you know, you have a risk of fire. But manufacturing, corporate environments, administrative places, you know, you could lock down that building. And so I'm a big fan of buzzer doors, or, you know, this is a pain in the neck. Have an employee stand there all day and let in people. It certainly does help. Now, some advanced features you could do is you can hire an off-duty officer, and often they come with their patrol car. And this is a real standard SOP kind of thing. Officers can anywhere run from like $20 to $40 an hour. It's a good investment. It's not just that you know, they're someone with a gun, but they have a radio, they have a power of arrest, and they have connections with their fellow officers to quickly get that support quickly. You can also hire a security firm. This is usually more for high level victims, like executive protection issues. And one thing that they do is that they can help with do a full-on threat assessment, or they could do a professional site assessment. But one thing that they do very well is they hire they are private investigators, and they tail the suspect. So, meaning if someone's made threats, well, you just have someone watch them 24 hours a day. It's very expensive and it's very effective. So, just let you be aware of those issues. Now, that's all like 2 days before. Let's go back 7 days before and look at that initial threat. And let's say someone's fired, or let's say, here's just a case of an employee says they're fired for stealing. He says, oh, it wasn't me. Management's out to get me, and I'm going to sue you for discrimination. This is all a lie. And as he's storming out the door, he goes, you won't live long to regret this. Well, is that a credible threat? Is that real? And what we're talking about is a threat assessment. Now, you could do this internally. Maybe you have the resources and the expertise within your organization, or you could outsource this, whether it's law enforcement or, and it varies whether law enforcement is capable or is willing to do this, or there's certainly third-party service providers. Ideally, you've got an incident, like some sort of threat, and then you have a report. The idea is you got an investigation team finding out more about it, gathering more data, and doing an assessment. Now, for larger organizations, ideally you have some sort of team, some crisis management team that really is made up of a variety of disciplines, like sort of a multidisciplinary approach: HR, risk management, employee assistance, frontline employees, legal, occupational health, and of course security, right? And the idea is that they've got a variety of opinions. They've got a variety of experience giving different viewpoints, and that's what you want. However, it's got to be a working team with strong lead with a strong leader, because if you have a dysfunctional team that's just sitting there arguing, these things need to be done quickly and decisively. And they also need checkbook power, because it says, hey, something needs to be done. They can make it happen. And this is, again, a serious issue. It's not some committee, and we're going to have a committee meeting about this next Friday. They could get together on the phone, review information, come to a decision, and have the authority to act on it. Of course, anything that's done legal has a very major role in all of this. So, security is going to have their view, employee assistance is going to have theirs, legal has a lot of say in it as well. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to interview. Obviously, you're going to talk to any witnesses or the victim who got threatened. You can try to find out more. If it's an employee, you could always, of course, it makes sense that maybe you're going to talk to them as well and get their side of the story. This is a time-consuming issue. And then there's skill. I'm sorry, I have a separate workshop on threat assessment, but there's ways that you could do the interviews so that you can get the best information. One little note, I can't remember if I put it in here. If you're interviewing the subject, please understand you have to consider safety as well. So maybe it's off-site, security could be present but not seen. Be aware that when you bring them in and they know they're on administrative leave due to a threat that they made, they could be deciding to commit that act of violence. The other thing you can do is get data, and this means internally your personnel records. You could also go to the courthouse and get civil records. You can do a criminal background check again. A recent one, I'll talk about that in a second. And also police reports. Please understand that there could be many, many police reports on this individual and not a single charge, meaning it'll never show up in any background check. So you go to their local law enforcement agency for their neighborhood or wherever they hang out, because it could really happen from anywhere, and pull up incidents that involve their home or things like that. Something I'm really fascinated with, and I do a separate workshop on social media, that today's folks, we talk about what we're going to do online. So Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Kicker, Instagram, people post what's going on in their lives. So you can get a lot of information that way. Or, of course, you can hire a professional to do it too. Now, if you do a background checks, please understand that you could also continually do background checks on your employees just to find out about any behavior that they engaged in since they were hired. I imagine that many people do background checks at the point of hire, where there can be background checks conducted after they're hired, especially if there's a misconduct issue. If they make a threat, there's a national law, the SAFE Act, I forgot what SAFE stood for, but essentially you could do it without their notice. So when you do a background check on someone, you need them to fill out a form approving it. If it's a documented misconduct issue, you could do the background check without their knowledge or consent. However, if you decide to take action based on that report, and this is only if you're doing third-party services, if you're using a consumer reporting agency to get the data. If you do it yourselves, it's a separate subject. However, if you fire them due to what you find in the report, you've got to let them a chance to refute it. All that I said is highly legalese, and there's a lot of I sound like an attorney, and I'm not. So, of course, talk to your own legal counsel before taking any action here. Now, what else are we trying to find out? When we're doing the investigation, people are saying, well, what am I looking for? Again, I'm briefly going to run over the top points. One thing it's really hard to define, I can't say, yes, they've been charged with this, or, they have this weapon. But it's this broad personality trait. It's the sense of ego-based sense of blaming others, that it's always someone else's fault. People commit these acts because they believe that they've been wrong, that they are right and that you are wrong. And so we're really looking for that sort of trait, those sort of issues where they feel like their values are being insulted and infringed upon, what they believe is the right. So that's sort of the things I'm sort of looking at. We may know individuals like this, but these are, and combined with other traits, these are sort of the things that I'm looking at. Another factor is these are really desperate acts. These individuals commit suicide, or they don't have an after-game plan. I mean, this is the only thing they're going to do, and they don't think beyond it. And with that, that means that their whole lives are ruined. So, as we're doing background checks and civil court checks, what's going on with them financially? Are they bankrupt? Are they going through other issues? Are suicidal ideation? Do you get the sense of hopelessness? Again, a lot of these folks, roughly 1/3, commit suicide. So that desperation, that depression are certainly warning signs. Related to that, it's the sense of personal support networks, meaning if you financially I might be going through something, health problems, other issues, but if they got no one to back them up, to hold them up, if they're really without that support system, that's another warning sign for me. Of course, one of my big questions, whenever someone calls me quickly and they need some help, I just really, what I suggest for them to find out is weapons. Yes, other things can be used, but through YouTube, through like where they're posting them shooting themselves, shooting a gun, or their friends and family they'll talk about. Generally, people who are really big gun connoisseurs, collectors, they talk about it, so that's how you'll know. But one thing you could always do is go and find out from a concealed weapons permit. That may not be public record. That's another subject. But if you can find out if they've got a firearm is important. Now, I'm pro-gun. So a lot of people have hunting guns, but what raises concern certainly are assault-type weapons, or the amount of weapons, and also the issue around it, for killing people, right? If there's that fascination around this point. We could talk about mental health issues or substance abuse issues. Now, with this, when we're talking about employees, we have to realize that there's HIPAA regulations involved as well. So when you're gathering this data, if it's a client, let's say you're a hospital and you're doing an assessment on a patient, or your employer and you're doing an assessment on an employee, and your occupational health nurse has knowledge about this stuff, as a security guy, I'm saying I want to know everything. As a non-attorney, I'm going to say be very careful what you're doing with this information, how you get this information, where you're sharing it, and how you're storing it. And I'll let the attorneys go more into detail with that. But as a security person, I'm saying these are very important bits of information that I would want to know about. Other things, what's going on in their lives. This relates to the sense of hopelessness, but many of these incidents are involved about some contention. There's a grievance, so maybe there's a divorce, maybe there's a discrimination suit, something like that. So watch those court cases. It's really an important issue. One vital part regarding domestic violence in the workplace is you need to know if the victim left the abuser. The two big ones are if the victim finally left, either saying she's leaving or she actually did leave, and B, also finding out about other relationships. If they started a new relationship, or there's another, I'll just say it, there's another man involved, that has got huge risks around a violence erupting. So all these factors are all things you need to consider. Later on, I'm not going to do a pitch right here, but I got a threat assessment tool I'll show you, and it's a great tool to combine all this data. Now, finally, none of this is very scientific. I mean, this point right here, emphasize your gut. You could gather all this data, you could put it on a chart, you can put it into a computer and compute it all, but it comes down to your instinct. I could rattle off a lot of cases where the personal gut reaction was an important factor. Now, when you're doing a threat assessment, please understand that it's again, I talked about a group process, so there's going to be different views there, and we're really talking about guessing human nature. Threat assessments are far from an exact science, but what it could do is lead to greater probability, and that's all we're doing. We're always saying is, maybe this is more of a chance and this has less of a chance. So that's what we're trying to do, and you look at that and you determine your best course of action. Now, what can we do right now? Hopefully no one right now is ever threatened or you're concerned about a real case, like, you have an immediate pending threat. But right now, today, these are things we could do. Broadly, what we could do is assess your facility, and we could look at your organization through your policies and procedures. What I'm talking about is an organizational risk assessment. Just as Johnny Lee's little vernacular, but, threat assessment means a specific threat. Like, is this guy, well, is there a shooting going to occur because of this situation? Risk assessments broadly about the organization, regardless of any specific incidents or concerns. Again, I think you saw this picture before. You got this threat assessment team. Well, they could also be the same group of people who do the broad risk assessment of your facility. The best indicator of what will happen is what's happened before. So one idea is to do an audit of your previous incidents. Now, I've done numerous of these audits, and what I find is that it's sitting in security's office, or I go to HR and they've got their records, and then I go to the safety folks and they've got their records. So all of these threats that were documented are all placed in different places. The idea is you really want to have a central tracking system, again, some sort of crisis management team with a workplace violence coordinator who could put their finger or put their hand on that folder of incidents, and they got it all in one place. This is not only important in terms of streamlining response, but in terms of looking in the past, debriefing these to determine the risk. So you can look at, hey, this department's got a lot of issues, or this same guy keeps popping up in different departments because he's getting transferred around. These are all things that can be discovered during a review of the records. Now, regarding records, again, I want to emphasize there's a big point about robbery is actually the leading cause of death, along with suicide. So, look at your crime rates. It, again, depends upon your industry. If you're doing service or retail, naturally, these are really important issues. But even if you're manufacturing, it's your employees walking out to their cars after third shift where they're being jumped, or after second shift. So, look at crime records, and most law enforcement agencies will have some sort of data tracking of crime, even based on type of crime, such as rape, robbery, stuff like that. Now, broadly, we could also, that's all like policy or audit of incidents. We could look at engineering controls, and I don't specialize in this, but you can certainly bring in professionals who can. One point is, while you can bring in professionals, I believe many people can get most of it just by walking around their building, especially at night. Of course, do it with other people, and just like try to imagine you're stalking someone. Try to imagine you're trying to break in. Try to imagine you're trying to jump someone. Where would you do it? How would you do it? A big factor, of course, is entry control. Access control is a very important part. For certain industries, you've got to have open policies like a restaurant, but broadly for other areas, I mean, there's ways you can control access control. We're talking about barriers, ways to monitor who is coming in, who can come out. With employees, it's great to have the card swipe or the keypad entry so you could change that code instead of, rechanging the locks if you're just having old-fashioned keys. The lobby is a place of a big concern for a lot of places, so think about how it's laid out. Is there a clear view? Can people hide? And for those individuals in the front desk area, do they have an escape or a barrier so they could leave should they be threatened? Lighting, of course, is a very important factor as well. Barriers are an important issue. Even if it's like just a low fence that people can climb over, it's still a visual barrier, and it is a delay as well. Now, a lot of security folks focus in on surveillance, and there's a lot of it. I mean, I'm in the field. I'm out there at ISC events, and that the camera technology is mind-blowing. I was talking about video analytics stuff, and it's actually kind of scary. But the one point I want to put out there is it's wonderful for preventing crime. For the mass shooter incidents, it's not a deterrent. It's not, because these people don't try to escape or they commit suicide. So my argument is that cameras, unless they're actively monitored, are not a deterrent. I'm a big fan of buzzer doors. Like, you've got a camera on the front door and you could buzz people in. There's real advantages to that. Also, panic buttons as well. Here's a little plug. I'm going to talk about my panic button later. Whatever panic button you use, consider its worth. Here's a great case in Detroit where an individual made threats against a TV station, and then when the individual arrived, after he made the threats, they put a poster out, they got a buzzer door, and they didn't let him in. And it was a good thing. He had a gun and ended up shooting somebody who was outside, but he did not actually get into the facility. Now, whatever security measures you put into place, access control, video cameras, sign-in sheets, buzzer doors, the majority of the time it won't have a technological failure. It's going to be a human failure. It's not used properly. It's, what is that called? User error. And that's where, you see the back door. You spent $20,000 on a high-tech entry access control program, and then someone just puts a rock on the back door so they can have their smoke breaks easily. It's stuff like that see the failure. Now, more better advanced ones have a little buzzer that goes off. The door's propped open for more than 5 seconds. the safety guy or safety manager be notified. So, and then just put that out there. But just be aware of these issues. All that I talked about, often it's called crime prevention through environmental design. Now your local law enforcement officer can gladly come out there and do a site review of your facility, or of course you can bring in professionals. There's an organization called ASIS, and there's a certification for people to go through this, and it's very tough. I don't even want to bother with it, but it's excellent, and if you bring in one of those folks, they will do a good site assessment for you. Let's talk about a little bit about policy and procedures. And I know people think maybe I should have spent more time on looking at workplace violence policies, and there is value in that. And I just want to put out there's plenty of free models available. I'll show you where you can go and get my free model. There's tons out there. You really want, though, I'm cautious of just grabbing something online and just changing the title at the top. Of course, your legal and HR are going to go through it to make it applicable to their industry and their geography and their culture. So I'll put that in there. I just want to emphasize some key points. Number one, it's not about don't do this, don't do that, you can't have a weapon in the workplace. Ideally, it's about an agreement with the employees, and you have some sort of demonstration of support measures. It's an agreement between the employer and the employees. So what's there for the employees to come forward and talk about it? And then feeling that there won't be any retaliation. A big thing that I just want to put in one little plug is I'm a big fan of off-duty conduct. Let people know that what they do outside of work will impact their job as well, especially depending upon the nature of their work, that if they're caught committing a violent act, that they may lose their job as well, just because it's a factor to look at. The most important part for me about a workplace violence policy is the reporting procedures. So whatever it is, I mean, it's great to have a form or some sort of online thing, but the reality is, would people know how to get to it, and would they use it? The real weak link in a policy or workplace violence program is really about getting employees to tell someone, reporting, disclosing their concern. Now, if they don't know how, that's where management really failed, because if it wasn't really clear and if it's not obvious to them how they could report, then that's an issue. Now, it's fine. That what makes sense, the reality is people often talk to their direct supervisor about it if they feel safe telling them, and it's that supervisor level, that frontline mid-management that needs to understand these procedures, because I'm not knocking them, but like a lot of the frontline employees, it may not be their role to, look up that form, fill it out, and hand it in. Ideally, again, I go back to that whole central coordinator person, someone who's got that information to move it forward. I want to take a little break here and say, I'm apologizing. I'm running up to a full hour. I'm going to go a little late. I hope that's okay. Again, if you need to leave, I apologize, but this will be recorded. So there we go. Otherwise, I'm going to go beyond the hour. Why do people not report? There's a lot of reasons why. One of the big ones is fear. So people are scared if the guy says, hey, if you tell anyone, I'm going to shoot you. Well, that's real. What could be done is demonstrating to the employees that management will step in and help them. It's sort of like the bully situation in the schoolyard. Unless you come forward and seek help, you're alone and they're controlling you. Another issue is that people feel like they want to protect their coworkers. This could be like a domestic violence situation where if I tell someone about Sally's abusive boyfriend, are they going to fire her? That's a real barrier to reporting. Another thing is I'm not actually a fan of zero tolerance policies, because I'm not even really sure what zero tolerance means. I mean, I know what it means, but how it's actually applied is usually confusing. And what happens is that people are concerned, hey, I know Joe's going through a hard time and he said some inappropriate stuff, and I know he's having a few drinks during lunch, but he's a good guy. I don't want to report him because he'll get fired. This is it's hampering disclosure, and that's the problem. So just be aware of your policies, which might be like very strict and we have zero tolerance. What are you actually doing for impacting the chance for disclosure? The worst case is when management is doubted, like you report it and nothing happens. One of the real challenges with employee-related issues is that because of employee confidentiality, you can't tell what was being done. So someone could be sent to EAP and docked in their pay and ordered to do a psych evaluation, but they can't go and tell to the rest of the employees, so it looks like nothing's done. It's up to management then to convince employees that yes, we do care and things are being done. Another problem, if I may say, is our veteran supervisors, meaning you have that mid-level manager who it is reported. I said that the real problem is it's not gets reported. Well, guess what? It was. They told their manager, and it could be as casual as, hey, I'm worried about Johnny. He said some weird things, and we just said this, sitting at the coffee machine, and I go, well, I'm just worried about him. And they're thinking, that's my report. I just reported. Now, what the supervisor does, maybe they go and talk to Johnny and see how he's doing, but maybe they're not documenting it, or the supervisor digs in and finds out some more stuff and then deals with it themselves. That's what supervisors do. They deal with problems. But if they don't bump it up, it never gets to the human resources or to security, and that's where the problem emerges. The big thing is encourage people to report by having an open and supportive administration. Demonstrate that you're doing something about it. Demonstrate that you're going to intervene. This goes back to the support clauses within your policy. If people see the value and the benefit of reporting, then they're going to step forward. Because, folks, the bottom line is the most important thing we can do is really have that environment. People say, well, what can we do to stop workplace violence? And, we're talking about active shooter drills and carrying guns and metal detectors and, video analytics on their, 360 pan tilt zoom cameras, and that's cool, but it really means nothing if people don't believe their organization is going to support them, or if they have a hostile, toxic work environment where these kind of incidents, these threats are festering and grow and to become potential violence. So that's really the thing that everyone can do, not just HR, not security. It's everyone's responsibility to keep an eye out for each other and offer that support. Actually, we're doing all right. We're only a little bit over time. I wanted to open it up. Any questions? Golly, I feel like I zipped through that real quick, but hopefully you could always go back to see the slides or attempt or look at the recording again. While I'm waiting for any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I'm just going to keep talking. This is brought to you by Piece of Work, ePanic Button, Rampage Report, and Threat Assessment Tool. We've got a whole bunch of webinars coming up. Let me pull that up actually. Go to the Piece of Work site. You'll probably get an email about this, but you're right here at this event. Today's the 14th, but we got a great program coming up on advanced active shooter drills. This is more for management, not just for participants, but how management can look at these drills. Stalking is a huge issue. That's going to be done with an outside professional. Tammy from Janus Investigation, she does an awesome job, and that's going to be great. And then we do these incident reviews where we look at these incidents, these recent incidents, and we assess them. So that'll be pretty exciting. Feel free to join us. And I actually have a few more lined up. I just got to get it out there. Any questions? No questions yet. All right. Feel free to ask those questions, folks. This is brought to you. Let me just show you one little thing. I'm sorry, here comes the pitch, but ePanic Button. So you're there at the front desk or you're at your office and someone comes in, you could mouse over this icon, click on it, and it creates this pop-up. Or we have hotkeys, so you can say, oh, let me look that up for you, sir, and then you press the hotkey and it sends off the alerts. Or we have buttons. We just are now testing our remote buttons. Actually, I've got my remote right here, and it sends out pop-up alerts, text messages, and emails to whoever you want. Let me show it to you real quick. See over by my clock, down here, I mouse over, someone comes in, starts threatening me, I click this, and then, let me move my mic. Boom. This pops up in anyone's workplace or on anyone's computer that is in your organization, and it notifies them that Johnny on the balcony needs security. So it's just a cute, great little system. It also sends emails and text messages as well to whoever you want. It's entirely configurable. We've got these three buttons: support for low-level concerns, security for high-level concerns, or medical alert. You could edit the buttons. You can have 5 buttons. You can have 1 button. You can have buttons specifically to a specific threat, like Johnny is here. Whatever you want, it's entirely configurable. We'll be doing a demo later on as well. Other things, sorry for the pitches, but I gotta survive to do these programs. This is the threat assessment tool, and I talked about doing threat assessment, and you're gathering all this data. Let's look at let's look at this case right here. Let's say you're doing an assessment. You could add all these factors, such as their health concerns, their history of violence, what's going on in their lives, and this is the case I told you about, the Korean man who shot his boss and then fled and then killed himself, and his body was found in the Hudson. These are all factors. There's been no retaliation, no relationships. We've got divorces and no close family. That was a risk. Coworkers were afraid of him, saying he was dangerous, and even the daughter of the boss was concerned. You can add lots of other factors. I'm just making one up. A gun. He just bought a gun. That might go under, let's say history of violence. You can add in just bought a gun. And then this is added to the case, and then you're looking at this gestalt, sort of this graph gives you a broad view. Other things you could do is add action steps and make someone else or yourself or a team member could do something such as, let's say you want to do the background check, and I'm going to assign that to Tom Waits, and do civil records too. Boom, we just added a to-do list, and you can check whether it's completed or not. And then also you can add comments in here as well as he is dangerous, or whatever you want to add. He's whatever. It's a memo pad. This is where you can add whatever notes you'd like, and you could communicate regarding this incident, and your team could utilize this tool to do an assessment, have all the data, assign roles, and do stuff like that. The final pitch is I want to go back. If you just joined us late, earlier we were going over the Rampage report. That is a website that I manage where we track all the incidents of workplace violence around the country. Just in the past, where you can see this is all last month, right? And sadly enough, I'll add more for October. It's at rampagereport.com. So you're welcome to check that out and, to keep track of all the incidents. Folks, I don't see any other questions, so I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time that you dedicated to this time, so thank you. And if there's anything I can do, please let me know. You will get an email shortly which has a link to this website, to the presentation and to the recording. Actually, I'll tell you, it's going straight to our YouTube channel. I'll add it on here, and you can check out our other programs as well, so you might like that. Golly, Ned, it's time for me to have lunch. Look, it's 1 o'clock and I still haven't eaten yet. So I'm going to go get something to eat, and I want to thank you very much, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.